Hola and welcome to a very sunny Valencia, where today we're about to drive the new for 2023 DS3 e-tense. Now this is a substantially updated car with more power and more electric range, so we want to find out, is this the electric crossover that you should be buying? The car we're driving is a top-grade Opera model, which accentuates the new e-tense's sharper looks and standard LED lights with 17-inch alloy wheels, new Diva red paintwork and a plush interior. While the entry-level e-tense costs from £37,200 in Britain, this Opera version starts at £42,700, which is well above that of bigger alternatives like the Kia e-niro and dangerously close to hot-selling premium offerings like the Tesla Model 3. So we're in beautiful Valencia for more than just the sunshine. DS has actually brought us here because it's the design capital of Europe, and of course DS reckons this new 3 e-tense is pretty good when it comes to design. But before we get to all of that stuff, let me run you through some of the key basics for this e-tense model. Now, it's been updated with a bigger battery, which means it now has a claimed 248 miles of range, which is pretty good. It has 156 horsepower as well. It must be said that while the e-tense's total claim range of 248 miles is far from class leading, our test car did prove to be especially efficient in more built-up environments, meaning urban owners could probably get away with charging as little as once a fortnight. DS reckons you'll need 8 hours to fully charge the 3 e-tense using a domestic wall box, while 100 kilowatt public fast chargers can take the battery to 80% in just 30 minutes. Straight away I can tell you that the improvements that the car has mainly centered around refinement and insulation. I think they're really good. I'm not getting any powertrain whine, nothing whatsoever. Road noise has been really low. The road surface here in Valencia is admittedly very nice, but it does feel like they've really upped the insulation from the outside world and also that powertrain. Now, I think one of the key things that was missing from the spec sheet when I was reading it earlier today is adaptive dampers. You don't get the ability to soften the suspension in this car off into a comfort mode, and many of its rivals do have that, if not a standard, certainly as an option. But I must say, while the roads in Spain at the moment, these roads are pretty lovely actually, I've managed to tread over some bumps and some ruts and a few cambered parts of the road, and it is a pretty nice ride in this car. There's a little bit of fidgetiness at lower speed, but you do get a sensation of a really high quality suspension in the car, and that's, you know, it's got to have that really, given that this car is going to spend much of its life in the city. It is a crossover, but it's a hatchback size crossover. Other key things to talk about and think about is actually the visibility in this car is excellent. Now I'm sat nice and low. The seating position in this latest model is really good. We've got leather seats to go with all of this leather dash, and it means that the seat feels really nice and supportive. It's very comfortable, and I'm really happy with that. The electric seat can go nice and low, but you can also have it higher if you want better visibility. They've got a new steering wheel in this car as well, and my God, they've gone to town on the interior of this car actually. It's so unique. I don't think it's going to be everyone's cup of tea. I certainly am not sure I like all the diamond patterns on the dash, but they're functional, they're big buttons and they're easy to use. And actually now key as well is that you've got buttons on this new steering wheel, so they're in front of you. Before they were behind the steering wheel, so you can imagine if you were fumbling away you wouldn't know exactly what buttons you were pressing. Now they're nice and clear and easy to use on the front of the wheel. When it comes to this new technology as well in the cabin, you've got this 10.3-inch wide infotainment screen in the middle, which is very high class. It's got great graphics. I'm using the sat-nav in this car and it's pretty good. And the little screen ahead of me, now it's little, but it's designed into the car quite nicely. Good graphics, nice and sharp, and you do get a head-up display as well. This is a nice interior. There's leather wrapped on the dash, there's leather on the sides down here. It feels really good quality. It actually feels really tightly put together. And as I said, with that refinement as well, it does feel like a high-end car. DS is obviously chasing that premium status. It wants you to consider this car over German rivals, and I think when it comes to design, yeah, I think a lot of people probably would be tempted this car's way. So now we're outside of Valencia and it gives me a chance to test out the drive modes in this car. You get 3 drive modes. You get a normal mode, you get a sport mode, and you get an eco mode, and they kind of do what they say on the tin. Now normal mode, I must say, I'm not really thinking of any reason why I'd want to change out of this mode. There's good reactivity from the accelerator. Steering weighting is light but nice. In fact, actually the car overall feels pretty much optimized, and it's a nice thing to drive. But let's click it into sport because of course the mode is there. So the first difference is faster accelerator. It's pretty quick as well actually, that is pretty nippy. And now I can test on this bend here. It does corner quite nice. There's no feedback, there's no, you know, steering wheel feel or anything that you'd get from a sports car, but you know, the car handles pretty nice and it rides well as well on this section of tarmac we're on. Now in eco mode, you don't get your full power. It actually cuts the power back from 156 horsepower unless you put the pedal into the carpet, and for safety reasons, an engineer confirmed earlier that you do then get the full power. So for example, if you pull out of a junction and you find yourself with a lorry approaching you at high speed, put your foot down, you will get the full power, but otherwise just a bit slow to react, the accelerator. I mean, I don't personally care for eco modes. I think you should just drive more economically, and actually there's a system in this car which you get in many electric cars that will help with that, even if you leave it in normal or even sport mode, and that is B mode. So you've got drive, which does what it says on the tin, but if you click the lever back into B, now you've got much more regen. So if I'm on the accelerator, it feels totally normal. Come off the accelerator, the car feels like I'm braking. So those of you who are familiar with electric cars will probably know what this feels like, but for those of you who aren't, effectively it means you don't need to use the brake pedal apart from emergency braking scenarios. Let's see if it brings the car to a complete halt, because that's always an interesting test. We're slowing right down, 30k, 25k, it seems like we might come to a stop. And no, it's creeping me along at about 8 or 9k, so you will need to press the brake if you actually want to come to a stop, but that's going to be very useful if you're just coasting up to traffic jams or red lights. You can actually make the most of that system, not use the brakes, which means less wear and tear on your brakes and hopefully less brake dust as well, and it means you're actually going to get some energy back, so you might even increase your range, albeit by a very small amount. Now, for those who prefer to let the car do a bit of the driving, there are quite a lot of driver assist features in this DS. Now, you get all the basics. You get a reversing camera with a very high definition camera, actually, I must say. It's really sharp and really good. You can catch details in the bumpers of cars you're reversing up to, as I tested earlier. And you also get adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, all of the basic stuff you would expect. Although you don't get quite as much as you do in Hyundai or Kia models. They're really, really good these days. And some of the other brands now also catching up. So it's not the best in class, but there's enough there. Adding to that rear view camera, you also get a 360 view, which is obviously computer generated, but it shows up on the infotainment screen. Basically, when you're reversing through, for example, a width restriction, I don't know why you'd be doing that, but if you were, you'd be able to see the view from above, which is generated using the sensors. So it's actually very easy to place this car on the road. And because you are in a more commanding position, I do feel quite confident driving it. We're on a very narrow stretch of road here, and I've been passing some big SUVs, but I'm always aware of where I'm at and how to place the car. So it's pretty lovely being up front in this DS3, but of course this is a crossover, which means you're very likely to be carrying passengers in the back. So let's see what it's like in the back. Now, this is of course a hatchback on stilts rather than a proper like SUV thing, so the space in the back is predictably not massive. There is a decent amount of space, and quite common these days you get a bit of a pinched rear on the back of the seat here, so there's good knee room. I've got really good headroom and good side headroom as well. Middle seat as well is quite wide, quite generous, so no major complaints there, but you don't get a few key bits of kit that you do in other models from other rival cars, such as there are no USB ports down here, and I don't spot anything in the way of heater controls or anything. So it's fairly basic in that regard, but leather trimmings in this Opera model are pretty nice. Let's have a look in the boot as well, because I have a feeling city drivers are going to be filling that thing up with shopping quite regularly. So we have conveniently filled the boot up to demonstrate the size of it. The button also to open it, as you can see, is hidden down under here. So it keeps that boot lid design nice and clean. And in the back here, as I said, it's a hatchback on stilts this, so the boot size is actually more hatchback than anything, which is to say it's good, it's okay. This is probably going to swallow most people's weekly shops, or in this case, our camera gear and my stayover bags. But yeah, it's not the biggest in the class, in fact, far from it, and you don't even get any underfloor storage as well. So good, but not great when it comes to space. Although that's not too much of a surprise. This car overall though has many things to like. I am a big fan of its design. I think the exterior looks fantastic, and I think the interior is very likable as well, although it's probably not my favourite design out there. I think the interior is a little bit overly fussy in some places, but I accept that many people are going to like that this thing is very different from the common stuff out there on the road. As far as crossovers go, this thing is pretty unique actually. But while there's plenty to like in the aesthetics department and no shortage of talents to be found in how it gets down a road, the DS3 e-Tense doesn't quite have enough in its technical armoury to really challenge the best in class. The likes of MG's 4 and Kia's e-niro have more range and more space for less money, but perhaps that doesn't matter here. The DS3 e-Tense injects more emotion into this outwardly sensible class than any other, and for that alone, we like it. So what do you think? Would you choose this DS3 over its rivals? Let us know in the comments below, and of course if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. See you very soon.